Hi folks, so if you've got solar power and you want it to see the data of your solar power and your grid consumption, then PV Output is the site for you. So I've got an Efergy hub kit which now I've got it set up correctly. So you can see here the top line is the temperature of the day, the green line is the energy generated, and the red line or pink on this video is the energy used or power used. Now I didn't have it correctly set up this morning. I had it correctly set up there, changed some settings, incorrect settings, incorrect settings, incorrect settings until here, and these are correct settings. And also, if you've been watching my video log, you can see there's been a partly cloudy day. So this is uploading via the Efergy Engage site, which gives you an API token output similar to this. And I had to set up this correctly. As you can see, you've got to have the unique name correct, and that's my solar, that's the grid power. These have to be unique. Yesterday they weren't, they were both the same, so the PV output data was wrong. So if we look at the previous day, this is actually my solar generation was completely wrong. Let's see, the power used column only had one because it had the same name on the token. The solar, which is this one, 163 watts, had the same name as the grid, so thus even though it was set up correctly in PV output, didn't have the energy used line. So you can see me trying to fix it here. So how you set PV output up with your Efergy is going to be written as well as explained. So how I got it to work and got it to work correctly was editing PV output, editing the actual system. I might not be logged in. No, I'm not logged in. Bear with me while I log in. So there's a couple pitfalls with live generation. So one of the pitfalls is that the temperature says the condition was fine today, when it's reading data off of an API for weather underground and then PV output documentation. So you can see the actual weather for today was scattered clouds. So I've noticed PV output, the condition says it always sets to fine, and that gives you a little star when it hasn't been. So that's one of the pitfalls. The temperature seems to be quite accurate, getting off the weather underground site. So let's go back to live. The other pitfall of using Efergy live, I go through other pitfall. If you don't have it right, initially give it a few days. It took me a few days because I worked full time, and so before I had it configured, you see the 6.4, this line here, at 1:30 in the afternoon, the Efergy thinks it was producing 6.49 kilowatts. This is the normalization, that's close to the truth. So if you minus 6.4 minus 1.1, we're closer to what really was generated. And the other thing, if you've got it wrong, it's not subtracting or opposing the grid power, so you end up with skewed data. So my energy consumption on PVOutput appears to be quite high. It reckons I've used 18 kilowatts today. So that's the other pitfall of using Efergy. And let's go have a look at the settings. So first, you always put, when you first join PVOutput, you put in your system details. So live settings, and this is the automatic upload. So you can choose your system. So I've got an Efergy. Probably the most accurate ones are Enphase, Fluxo, Sampi. You pay probably way more than I've paid. Efergy well under $200 for a solar kit, around $180, $170, where these guys you pay more, but they're accurate. This is about, Sampi's about $269, and then Fluxo depending on the model. But let's talk about the Efergy. So initially you see automatic uploads for the primary device. So initially I had this set to solar as the primary, following someone else's instructions. This is where I've set up the weather. So you need to log on to Weather Underground to get the station ID closest to you and sign up to get the API key to download the data. And this token you get from your Efergy Engage site, and this is where you need to set up your directions. So full consumption, my grid power is called power sub. Now the PVOutput documentation is incorrect for December. I don't know what's changed. So we can see here, using the token that PVOutput tell you to look at, power sub has a SID, and power GAC has another SID. So you take note of those and you go back to PVOutput, and this is how I got it to work. So I changed, initially I had solar as my primary, and I was minusing the grid power from the solar power. It was set to oppose. Sorry, I wasn't subtracting, it was set to oppose, and my data was getting skewed. For some reason PVOutput thinks Efergys have a temperature, not the Elite has a temperature, but you can't get that to talk to PVOutput, so I left that blank. Extended V7 and V8 are for the 3-phase kit, so I don't have that, so they're blank. And you can set up rules, so my data isn't accurate, so I might set up a power rule here that tells PVOutput that for the grid power, if it's less than 100 volts at night, equal to 0. The secondary device is Efergy, so it's the hub, but the direction is solar, and using the token test site that you get, which is this one, that's my solar. So that one. Then I have a rule. So if the power is less than 125 watts, make the power equal 0. And that's important because you get ghost data at night. I can add another rule to that changes the power factor. And that's probably, once you've got your rules set up, I mean your settings. So important thing is, if you've bought an Efergy solar kit, or you've got an Efergy hub and you've got 2 transmitters and CT scanners, this is the correct setting for me. It may vary for your system, but in December 2015 the instructions on PVOutput don't line up, and the guys on Whirlpool settings don't light up from July this year. So that's why I made this video. So set your consumption up as your primary. Power is your grid, and you want to subtract your solar. So these are called CIDs, and the numbers are SIDs. SID. So that's what you'll see on the Engage site. That's how you determine, hey, that's my grid power, and the CID is called power sub, and the solar has a SID of this one, and it's called power GAC. That's just what it's called, and how to get it to work on PVOutput. So once I've had that set up, I don't have to choose anything else. I can just hit save, then wait 10 minutes. I'm going to cancel that because mine's already working. And once you've got, because it takes 5 minutes to poll, and then probably another 5 minutes to poll to get the actual line. So then you get the true readings of what's going on. So we can see here the generation power is 163 watts. That's differing a little bit to the Efergy, and it probably is different to the what's happening on the inverter at the moment, but we can sort that out later with rules. And the power used, so because I've set it up, the generation line isn't the primary, and the grid power is the primary, then I'm getting a better reading on the power used. So you can see I had a bit of time this afternoon, configured it, and it was minusing the grid line, but minus the solar line. So here at night time, the grid's reading correctly. So we can also see it is 6:33 in the evening, and the last update is 6:25. So if I refresh the page, see what I mean? You have to wait 10 minutes. So I haven't reached 6:34 yet, and so sometimes you have to wait 10 minutes for your data to come through. That's fine. Having a look through your 5-minute intervals. So if I go through, see these, there's a lot of them. See 0? That's when I realised I had the grid around the solar on the primary and the grid on the secondary. So it was still recording the grid power correctly, these ones. That's solar PV generation, and this is grid power, so it was still looking at the wrong data. So you may need a day or two to get the data running through properly, and this is here you see the rule at the middle of the night. The rule has set up the ghost power, so there's been an anomaly that's recorded 149 volts on the solar at midnight, 5 past midnight. So these, you just need to wait a few days after setting up your N-gauge to see your data. So we can see my solar started producing more than 125 watts, because that's the rule, at 55 past 4 in the morning. So that was, it was probably generating more than if you a bit earlier. But that's the kind of data that you'll see. And to correct, the other thing I need to correct is, you see how the total generation for today is 29, and if you look at the Efergy Elite 26, and the inverter is closer to, is different again. So I'll be setting up another rule on PVOutput to correct that. The other thing is you cannot edit your live data until the end of the day. So you can turn it off, go back to live, and turn refresh off. That will turn off the live data. Now that's reason why you need to do that is that if you want to correctly record your generation for today, so you can see here the Efergy hub thought I did 29 kilowatts, and my solar did 29 kilowatts, and then because I had the settings wrong, it thought I imported and consumed 18 kilowatts, and then it calculates the difference. So in the next video, once I've worked out the rules, I'm going to correct the generation closer to the inverter, and also correct the consumption. So tomorrow is going to have another set of data. So what I'll do is going to post the details. So going back to the details and summary, the details of the live output, automatic uploads, on how I got the Efergy to work correctly, because they differ from the as I was saying, they differ from the PVOutput documentation. So it doesn't say, it reckons that the whole document was revised the 7th of December, but what I mean by it's not correct is if you click your inverter Efergy. So the first step, get your token from the N-gauge site, test the token. That's how I found out I had the two CT sensors were the same name and I wasn't getting the graph correct. So this is not correct. It puts you in the right direction, but it's not correct. So I'll post the correct documentation in my comments area to get you up and running. And it'll be also I'll post rules. So I don't know if there's got rules here. I'm probably flapping on a bit, but yes. So if you want to get an idea of what kind of rules can be applied, you can check the rules area. Or give me a moment, I'll dig up a document. Solar custom rules. So that's if you want, that's the kind of rule I set up for my solar line. So if the power is less than 125 watts, then call it zero. It's called phantom power. Increase consumption, so that's if your live output data is less than your inverter, you want to increase it. So I'll be using a decrease consumption. So once I figure out the percentage difference between what the Engage hub has generated versus what my inverter says, I'll get a percentage. I put that through, I do the formula, and then I can use this multiplier. There's a few other rules as well, so these come in handy to correct your data. Okay, so if you've got any questions or comments on what I can do better, because I am getting better with my reviews, feel free to comment.